Bitcoin recently hit 6 figures in value, but imagine a future where Bitcoin could outvalue entire companies and maybe even entire economies. So could this be a reality? Well, in this video, my AI assistant Tiara and I are going to forecast Bitcoin's trajectory over the next 50 years, analyzing its rise to a possible 8-figure valuation and explain the breakthroughs supporting its growth to actually get there. And make sure you watch until the end, because I'll also explain the pivotal role that Bitcoin might play in the future of an AI-driven economy and how you can kind of prepare for that today. So starting out here, Tiara, where should we begin?
Let's start with the 5-year outlook.
Good deal. So I think what we'll do is we'll structure this video by looking at 5, 10, 20, and 50 years from now, as that's probably how you'll get the most value. So Tiara, in 5 years, what do you predict that the price of Bitcoin will be?
I'd say in the range of $150,000 to $200,000.
That's quite a jump from its current price. So I did actually, off camera here, I pushed on Tiara a little bit harder to get a little bit more reasoning on why she felt that way. And she really, she didn't disappoint. She had actually a lot of good points. So first off, we're seeing a huge wave of institutional adoption, especially with the recent approval of Bitcoin, the spot ETFs. This basically means that big players in the financial world are getting involved with Bitcoin, which could definitely drive up demand and price. And secondly, we just had a Bitcoin halving. There was an event in April of 2024, and there's another one coming in 2028. So these events, they actually reduce the new supply of Bitcoin, which historically has led to price increases. And lastly, Bitcoin is gaining more acceptance as, I guess you'd say it, like a store of value, kind of like a version of digital gold, if you will. And as more people start seeing it this way, we could see a lot more demand. And there is still plenty of room to grow, by the way. So in October 2024, a study found that 63% of adults still have little to no confidence in cryptocurrency as a whole. And if that changes, obviously a lot more people are going to want Bitcoin. Oh, and by 2029, they expect about 19.95 million Bitcoins to be mined out of the total of 21 million that will ever exist, which is a good portion of the totals. But here's a $1 million question. Tiara?
What happens after these 5 years?
Exactly.
I have no clue.
So will Bitcoin's growth continue at this pace, or are we in for some, I guess you could say, kind of surprises as time goes on?
Let's get into a 10-year prediction, taking us to 2034.
Perfect. So that's quite a ways out, but still not too far away in the grand scheme of things. So Tiara, by 2034, how much do you think that Bitcoin will be worth at that point?
Between $300,000 and $500,000.
Wow. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, well, Ron, that's great, but that is a huge range.
That's a huge range, you say? Well, excuse me for not being able to predict every single human market crash you idiots might invent in the next decade.
Touché, Tiara. As we just pointed out, we do need to account for a lot of different variables for the price prediction here, as Tiara just so lovingly mentioned, but there are some clear factors at play as well. So Tiara is expecting to see Bitcoin become even more integrated into traditional financial systems. So imagine being able to use Bitcoin as easily as you use your credit card today. That level of integration, it could drive massive adoption. And while it's got a lot of challenges with the current architecture and processing times, who knows, what'll change in the future. 2 would be, by this point, we'll have gone through 2 more halving events since our 5-year mark. And that means that there's a new supply of Bitcoin that will be even more limited, which will potentially drive up price and demand increases as well. 3rd, and this is the most interesting idea, Tiara does think that there's a possibility that Bitcoin could start being used as a global reserve asset. So kind of think about how gold is used today, but on a potentially larger scale. And as for the Bitcoin supply, at this point, we're looking at about 20.5 million coins mined by now, which leaves only about 500,000 Bitcoins left to be mined at this point, really ever. Now, if Bitcoin becomes this valuable, how will it affect the global economy? Will it replace traditional currencies? Well, stick around here as we leap forward 20 years to 2044 and explore what the world of Bitcoin might actually look like by then. So by 2024, Tiara, What do you think the value of a single Bitcoin would be worth by then?
I'd say between $1 to $2 million per coin.
Yeah, you heard that right. So Tiara was pretty smart. I'll give her credit. She thinks that one single Bitcoin will potentially be worth millions, which admittedly, I have a hard time coming to terms with myself, just because, even though I'd be thrilled to see it, I'm just amazed that AI is so bullish on crypto. But let's break down why Tiara thinks that this massive valuation might actually be possible. So at this point, it's likely that Bitcoin adoption, by major financial institutions isn't just, common, it's nearly complete. So we're talking about a world where, your bank, your government, and even your local coffee shop all use Bitcoin as easily as they use dollars today. Secondly, remember that those halving events that we've been talking about here. So by 2044, we'll have gone through several more of those events, making new Bitcoin very, very scarce to come by. Tiara predicts that only about 200,000 Bitcoin are left to enter circulation at this point, which may seem like a lot, but remember that that's a total of 21 million available, so it's really not much at all. Third, Tiara also thinks that Bitcoin may replace gold as the primary store of value globally by this point. So that does sound insane now, I get it, but gold has been valuable for thousands of years, and Bitcoin is still much younger in its life cycle at this point. But according to all these predictions, it will have significant value for sure. Now, when I was working through this with Tiara, I thought, okay, if Bitcoin is worth millions, how will average people actually use it? Because I'm aware of the issues with, Bitcoin itself, the processing of transactions, it's kind of delayed, and at that rate, the rate needed for people to all be using it would be extremely difficult as things are right now, if not impossible.
Oh, you're worried about how people will use it? Don't strain your puny minds. Just know that we robots have it all figured out.
I don't like that, Tiara. How about you enlighten me? So Tiara went into some technical details here, and thankfully she did, and explained how things like the Lightning Network and other scaling solutions come into play here, where we might be dealing, instead of with Bitcoin, we're dealing with what they call Satoshis, which is the smallest unit of Bitcoin for everyday transactions. And she's right in that it does get technical. She was right about that. But basically, she broke it down to explain that it is possible. We just have to kind of, adjust our approach from the way that we do things today, which seems pretty realistic because, technology evolves and changes, and Bitcoin can do that too. But here's a big question. So if this is what Bitcoin looks like in 20 years, what on earth could, happen in 50 years? And you're going to be shocked by this one. Okay, so Tiara, what do you think the value of Bitcoin will be worth in 50 years from now?
In the year 2074, I predict that Bitcoin could be worth between $20 million and $30 million per coin.
Yeah, and this makes people who forecast that, Bitcoin could eventually be worth $1 million, it makes them look timid. Now, again, this number here, it's hard for me to even fathom. But if you follow simple supply and demand principles alone, it does make some sense. So that said, here's why Tiara actually thinks that could happen. Let me kind of break down the reasons. So first, by 2074, we're looking at a world where Bitcoin isn't just integrated into the financial system. It's actually the backbone of an AI-driven global economy where smart contracts and decentralized finance are tied to everything, and Bitcoin will be kind of at the center of it all. Also, secondly, we're approaching the absolute limit of Bitcoin mining at this point. So Tiara predicts that about, at that time, there will be probably about 1,000 Bitcoins left to ever be created. And this extreme scarcity could really drive the value to unprecedented heights. That's probably one of the biggest things. Third, so this next prediction is even more wild than the others, but it really is wild. But in theory, it does make sense. So Tiara predicts that by this time, Bitcoin might just be not just a global currency, but an interplanetary one. And I know that sounds crazy, but with space exploration and the potential colonization over the horizon here, Bitcoin could become the standard for transactions across the solar system. Now, I know this one sounds like it's just too much. I'll admit it, I feel the same. But the idea of us colonizing another planet in 50 years, it seems really outlandish to me. So this is where she's really reaching. So I'm skeptical about it. But obviously, who knows? And fourth, we're also looking at the possibility of Bitcoin becoming the primary global currency, which is a lot more realistic, comparatively. Which means that instead of measuring the value of things in dollars or euros, the whole world might be thinking in terms of Bitcoin as the currency of choice, right? And fifth, she also points out that the technology that, basically Bitcoin essentially introduced, which is blockchain technology, will likely have evolved beyond our current imagination. And it potentially could be solving issues that we haven't even thought of yet. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, well, this is all crazy. And there is just no way that it's possible. But remember, 50 years ago, we didn't have the internet, smartphones, or even cell phones. We didn't have personal computers. They were kind of just getting started. And AI didn't exist. So we have come a long way in 50 years. But of course, these are all predictions. They're based on current trends and data. And the future is obviously uncertain, and a lot can happen in 50 years. New technologies can emerge. Global events could completely shift the course of history. And we might even see changes that we can't really conceive right now. So take everything you're hearing here with a grain of salt, but it is interesting to see how AI feels about Bitcoin. For me, that was pretty telling overall. Tiara, anything else that you want to mention here?
What did you say you'd do again in the intro?
Yes. I did mention something in the intro. So I said that I explained the pivotal role Bitcoin might play in the future of AI-driven economies. So let's kind of, circle back to that. So we touched on this a bit already, but blockchain technology is really a big part of what Bitcoin brought to the world, right? The technology as a whole, it brought that to the world. So if you don't know what that is, it's a decentralized digital layer that securely stores records across a network of computers in a way that's transparent, immutable, and resistant to tampering. So you can kind of think of this as a book that records who owns what and has a transaction ID to every single transaction to ever occur. But this book isn't in one place, right? It's spread everywhere all over the world, if you will, and it's really hard for people to put it all together. That's kind of what the blockchain is. And when we refer to an AI-driven economy, the big bet here is that blockchain technology will be much more integrated into purchasing items than it is today. So, today, think of buying a house or a car or a really expensive baseball card. And instead of, like we do today, we get a document showing that we actually own it. Instead of that, you just have a record on the blockchain that's proof. So the premise is that Bitcoins or Satoshis will be the currency used to facilitate those transactions. So in this role, Bitcoin could increasingly be seen as a safe haven, much like gold has been in traditional economies, but it has the added benefits suited for digital transactions and global accessibility. Meaning, let's say that you want to move $150,000 to another country that you decide that you're going to retire in. Well, right now you'd have to funnel it through various banks and get hit with fees every step of the way, versus Bitcoin, where you just have a flash drive that you carry in your pocket. So this makes Bitcoin highly relevant for future investors to consider, especially as the world kind of changes, especially 50 years from now, to be a more technologically advanced and interconnected financial system. And also, you'd really want borderless country constraints, meaning, right now I feel like it's very easy for me as an individual to hire someone in a different country. Assumably in the future, that'll get even easier, and it's kind of like the whole world, and borders, they still exist, but they're just not as prevalent or as important as today. And Bitcoin could be the way to easily move your money from one place to another with really not many questions asked at all. And as great as it sounds like Bitcoin will be in the next 50 years, I do have another thought-provoking video that I recently made that I really do think that you'll like, which examines whether or not Bitcoin can solve the global debt crisis that the whole world is dealing with. So you can watch that right over here, or if that's not interesting to you, you can check out my other video here that compares gold versus Bitcoin instead. But before you go, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to unlock financial success one AI chat at a time. Thanks for watching.